The cargo ship Wandering Star moved slowly through the dark space between Mars and Jupiter. It was an old ship, built almost 30 years ago, and it made strange sounds when it moved. The metal walls would creak and groan like an old house in a storm. But Captain Bell loved this ship. He had been flying her for 12 years now, and she had never let him down. Was a tall man with broad shoulders and hands that were rough from years of hard work. His hair was dark brown with some gray at the sides, and his face had the kind of lines that came from squinting at stars and worrying about fuel costs. He was 43 years old, and he had spent more than half his life in space. On this particular night, if you could call it night in the endless darkness of space, was sitting in the captain's chair on the bridge. He was drinking coffee from a metal cup and reading a book on his tablet. The book was about the history of Earth's oceans, something he had never seen in person. Had grown up on a space station and had only visited Earth twice in his whole life. The bridge was small and cramped, with control panels that flickered with colored lights and screens that showed the emptiness outside. There were 4 chairs on the bridge, but only 2 were occupied tonight. Price sat at the navigation console, her fingers moving across the controls with easy skill. Was 26 years old, with short red hair and freckles across her nose. She had joined the crew 2 years ago, fresh from the academy, and had watched her grow from a nervous newcomer into a confident navigator. She was smart and quick, and had a sense of humor that kept the crew laughing during long hauls. The only sound on the bridge was the soft hum of the ship systems and the occasional beep from one of the consoles. It was peaceful in a way that had learned to appreciate over the years. Space could be terrifying in its vastness, but it could also be calming. There was something about being so far from everything, so isolated from the noise and chaos of human civilization, that made a person feel both very small and very free. "Captain," said suddenly, her voice breaking the silence, "I'm picking up something strange." Put down his tablet and looked at her. "What kind of strange?" "A signal. It's weak, but it's definitely a distress beacon." Fingers moved across her console and her forehead wrinkled with confusion. "But the frequency is wrong. It's not on any standard channel. And the pattern, I've never seen anything like it." Stood up and walked over to her station. He leaned over her shoulder and looked at the data on her screen. She was right. The signal was unlike anything in their database. It pulsed in an irregular rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, and the frequency shifted in ways that human technology simply did not do. "Can you locate the source?" asked. "Already on it," typed quickly, and a map appeared on the main. A red dot blinked in the darkness not far from their current position. "It's about 2 hours away at standard speed. The signal is getting weaker, Captain. Whatever's out there, it's dying." Felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had responded to distress calls before. Sometimes they found survivors. Sometimes they found wreckage and bodies. Sometimes they found nothing at all, just empty space where a ship used to be. But there was something different about this signal, something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "Wake Sam and Lucy," said. "Tell them to meet me in the cargo bay, and change course. We're going to investigate." Nodded and reached for the intercom, but she hesitated. "Captain, company policy says we should contact command before responding to unidentified signals. They might want us to wait for a military escort." "Company policy can wait. Someone out there needs help." Was already walking toward the door. "Make the call if you want, but we're not waiting. By the time the military gets here, whoever sent that signal might be dead." He left the bridge and walked through the narrow corridors of the Wandering Star. The ship was not built for comfort. It was built for hauling cargo across the vast distances between planets and moons. The walls were bare metal, the floors were grated, and the lights were harsh and white. But knew every inch of this ship, every scratch and dent, every loose panel and squeaky hatch. It was more home to him than any building on any planet had ever been. Sam Cooper was waiting in the cargo bay when arrived. He was a big man, almost as tall as but much wider, with arms like tree trunks and a permanent scowl on his face. He was the ship's engineer, and he knew the wandering star's systems better than anyone. He could fix almost anything with a wrench and some creative cursing. "Told me," Sam said as entered. "An alien signal. Are you sure about this, Captain?" "I'm not sure about anything," admitted. "But someone is in trouble and we're the closest ship. That's all that matters." Sam grunted. He was not a man who liked surprises or uncertainties. He preferred things that made sense, things he could take apart and put back together. Alien signals did not fit into that category. Lucy arrived a few minutes later. She was the youngest member of the crew, only 22, and she served as the ship's medic and general assistant. She was small and thin, with long black hair that she always kept in a neat braid, and she had a gentle way about her that put people at ease. Had hired her because she was good at her job, but he had grown to value her for much more than that. She had a kind heart, and kindness was not always easy to find in the cold reaches of space. "What's going on?" Lucy asked, her dark eyes wide with curiosity. Explained the situation quickly. A strange signal, possibly alien, coming from a location not far from their current position. They were going to investigate, and they needed to be prepared for anything. "Alien," Lucy repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like actual aliens." "We don't know for sure," said. "It could be some new kind of human technology we haven't seen before. It could be a glitch in our sensors. But yes, it could also be aliens." Humanity had been searching for extraterrestrial life for centuries. They had found bacteria on Mars, simple organisms in the oceans of Europa, and strange chemical signatures in the atmospheres of distant planets. But they had never found intelligent life, never made contact with another civilization. The universe, as far as humans knew, was vast and empty and lonely. But that did not mean intelligent life was not out there. It just meant they had not found it yet. The next 2 hours passed slowly. Spent the time preparing for the boarding operation, checking equipment and going over procedures with his crew. Sam grumbled about the risk they were taking, but he did his job without complaint. Lucy asked questions, lots of questions, her scientific curiosity overcoming her nervousness. Kept them updated on the signal's status, which continued to weaken as they approached. When they finally reached the coordinates, what they found took his breath away. The ship, if you could call it a ship, was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was not made of metal or plastic or any material he recognized. It looked almost organic, like something that had grown rather than been built. The hull curved in flowing lines that seemed to shift and shimmer in the light of their spotlights. Colors rippled across its surface, blues and purples and silvers that had no names in any human language. It was beautiful, it was terrifying, and it was clearly damaged. Great gashes had been torn in the hull, exposing the interior to the vacuum of space. Some kind of fluid leaked from the wounds, crystallizing immediately into glittering clouds of ice. The ship was not moving, not spinning, just hanging there in the darkness like a wounded animal waiting to die. "My God," breathed over the intercom. "Captain, are you seeing this?" "I'm seeing it," replied. He was standing in the cargo bay, looking through the viewport at the alien vessel. His heart was pounding in his chest, and his mouth had gone dry. "What about that life sign you mentioned earlier?" "Still there, faint but stable. It's coming from the center of the ship." Turned to Sam and Lucy. "We're going over. Sam, you're with me. Lucy, stay here and monitor our vitals. If anything goes wrong, you get out of here. Don't wait for us." "Captain," Lucy started to protest. "That's an order." His voice was firm but not unkind. "I need to know that if this goes bad, someone will survive to tell people what we found." Lucy nodded reluctantly, her face pale but determined. And Sam suited up in their environmental suits. The suits were bulky and uncomfortable, but they would protect them from the vacuum of space and any hostile atmospheres they might encounter. Checked his equipment one last time: flashlight, communication device, basic medical kit, and a small cutting tool in case they needed to force their way through any obstacles. The crossing from the wandering star to the alien vessel was short but terrifying. Had done spacewalks before, hundreds of them, but this was different. He was approaching something unknown, something that could be dangerous in ways he could not even imagine. Every instinct he had was screaming at him to turn back, to call for help, to let someone else take the risk. But he kept moving forward, because that was who he was, that was who he had always been. The alien hull seemed to recognize their approach. As and Sam got close, a section of the surface simply opened, revealing a corridor bathed in soft purple light. There was no door, no hatch, just an opening that had not been there a moment before. "Did you see that?" Sam's voice crackled over the radio. "I saw it," floated into the opening, his flashlight cutting through the purple glow. "The ship let us in. It knows we're here." The interior of the alien vessel was even more extraordinary than the exterior. The walls pulsed with a gentle light that seemed to come from within the material itself. The corridor curved organically, like the inside of a seashell, and the floor was soft beneath their boots, almost like walking on thick carpet. And the smell, even through his suit, could detect a faint scent, something floral and sweet and deeply sad. It reminded him of funerals, of flowers laid on coffins, of grief and loss and endings. "I don't like this," Sam muttered. "This place feels wrong." "It feels like someone's home," said quietly. "Someone's wounded home." They followed the corridor deeper into the ship. The purple light guided them, growing brighter as they approached the center. Sensors showed the life sign getting stronger, closer, just around the next curve. And then they found her. She was lying in what appeared to be a medical bay, though the equipment was nothing could identify. Strange devices hung from the ceiling, emitting soft sounds that might have been alarms or might have been prayers. The floor beneath her was stained with blood, but it was not red blood. It was the color of liquid copper, bright and metallic and somehow beautiful even in its tragedy. The alien woman was humanoid, with 2 arms and 2 legs and a face that was almost human. But her skin had a silver sheen to it, like moonlight made solid, and her features were more delicate than any human's, with high cheekbones and a small nose and lips that were slightly too thin. Her hair, if it was hair, was long and white and spread around her head like a halo. She was dying. Could see it in the stillness of her body, in the shallow rise and fall of her chest, in the way her copper blood continued to seep from wounds that were too numerous to count. Someone had attacked her, had torn her apart with deliberate cruelty, and she had crawled here to this place to die. But that was not what made Stop cold. That was not what made his heart freeze in his chest and his breath catch in his throat. It was the baby. Cradled against the dying woman's chest, wrapped in something that looked like woven starlight, was an infant. The baby was tiny, smaller than any human newborn had ever seen, with the same silver skin as its mother. Its eyes were closed in peaceful sleep, and its tiny hands were curled into fists that clutched at its mother's clothing. "Oh hell," Sam breathed. Moved forward, his training taking over even as his mind reeled. He knelt beside the alien woman, his hands hovering over her, uncertain what to do. Her injuries were beyond anything he could treat with his basic medical kit. He was not even sure human medicine would work on her biology. "Ma'am," he said softly, "can you hear me? We're here to help." The woman's eyes fluttered open. They were deep violet, the color of the twilight sky on Earth, and they were filled with pain and fear and something else. Hope. Desperate, fragile hope. She spoke, and her voice was like music, like bells ringing in a distant tower. Did not understand her language, but somehow, impossibly, he understood her meaning. The words bypassed his ears and went straight to his mind, carrying emotions and images along with them. "Save my daughter, please save her." "I'll try," said. "I'll do everything I can, but you need to hold on. We can get you back to our ship, we can." "No." The woman's voice was weaker now, and the light in her eyes was fading. Too late for me, but she is all that matters, my little light, my hope. She lifted one hand, trembling with effort, and pressed it against his chest. He felt warmth spread through him, a connection being formed, a bond being created. And with that touch came knowledge, rushing into his mind like water through a broken dam. He saw images, memories, stories. He saw the woman's home, a world of crystal spires and floating cities, of beings made of light and song. He saw her people, ancient and wise, watching over the younger races of the galaxy like gardeners tending delicate flowers. He saw her daughter, the infant in her arms, born just days ago, loved beyond measure. And he saw her attackers, dark shapes, twisted beings filled with hatred and fear. They had hunted her across the stars, had torn her ship apart, had left her bleeding in the void. All because she had dared to believe that younger races, races like humanity, deserved a chance to grow and thrive. Why, gasped, overwhelmed by the flood of information, why did they do this to you? Because I believed in you. The woman's hand fell from his chest and her eyes began to close. Because I believed humanity could be more than they are. Because I believed you could love. I don't understand. You will. Her voice was barely a whisper now. Take care of her, love her, and when my mother comes, tell her I'm sorry, tell her I tried. And then she was gone. The light faded from her violet eyes, and her body went still, and the only sound in the medical bay was the quiet breathing of the sleeping infant. Knelt there for a long moment, unable to move. He had seen death before, had held dying in his arms, had made the hard calls that came with being a captain. But this was different. This was something he could not process, could not file away in the part of his mind where he kept the difficult things. An alien woman had died in front of him, had trusted him with her last breath, had given him her child to protect. Captain, Sam's voice came from somewhere far away. Captain, what do we do? Looked down at the infant. She had woken up, perhaps disturbed by the cessation of her mother's heartbeat, and she was looking up at him with enormous eyes. They were the same violet as her mother's, flecked with gold, and they held an intelligence that seemed impossible for someone so young. She did not cry. She just looked at him and felt the same connection he had felt with her mother, a bond that went beyond words or species or the vast gulf of biology that separated them. We take her, said. His voice was steady, though his hands were shaking. We take her back to the ship and we keep her safe. And the body? Looked at the dead woman, at her peaceful face and her copper blood and her empty arms. We bring her too. She deserves a proper burial. She deserves to be remembered. Sam nodded slowly. He was not a sentimental man, but even he seemed moved by what they had witnessed. Okay, Captain, let's get them both out of here. The transfer back to the wandering star was tense. Carried the infant in his arms, tucked carefully against his chest, while Sam managed the grim task of bringing the mother's body. Lucy met them in the cargo bay, her face white with shock when she saw what they had found. Is that a baby?" she asked, her voice high and thin. Yes, handed the infant to her with careful instructions. Keep her warm. See if you can figure out what she needs. She hasn't cried yet, which is either a good sign or a very bad one. And the mother did not answer. He did not need to. Was waiting on the bridge when arrived, having left the infant in Lucy's capable hands. The young navigator was practically vibrating with questions, but she held them back when she saw the expression on his face. I've contacted command, she said instead. They're sending ships to our location, military and scientific vessels. They should be here in about 6 hours. Good, sank into his captain's chair and let out a long, exhausted breath. Until then, we wait, and we take care of that baby. What happened over there, Captain? What did you find? Closed his eyes. The images the alien woman had shown him were still swirling in his mind, a jumbled collection of wonders and horrors that he was only beginning to process. I found someone who believed in us, he said quietly. Someone who died because she thought humanity was worth protecting. Did not know what to say to that. She turned back to her console and began monitoring their sensors, keeping watch for any other ships that might approach. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions and impossible answers. In the medical bay, Lucy was doing her best to care for the alien infant. The baby seemed healthy enough, responsive and alert, but Lucy had no idea what she needed. Did she need to eat? Did she need special atmospheric conditions? Did she need something that humans could not even imagine? "It's okay," Lucy murmured, more to herself than to the baby. "We'll figure it out. We'll take care of you." The infant looked up at her with those huge violet eyes, and then, very deliberately, she reached out and touched Lucy's hand. And Lucy felt it, the same connection had felt, a wave of warmth and trust and something that could only be called love. "Oh," Lucy breathed. "Oh, you poor little thing, you understand, don't you? You understand everything that's happening." The baby made a soft cooing sound and closed her eyes. Within moments, she was asleep again, her tiny fingers still wrapped around Lucy's thumb. The next few hours were chaos. More ships arrived, military vessels bristling with weapons and scientific vessels packed with equipment and personnel. People came aboard the Wandering Star, people with uniforms and badges and an endless stream of questions. They took the alien woman's body for study. They ran tests on the infant. They interrogated and his crew about everything they had seen and done. Through it all, stayed close to the baby. He had not meant to become her protector, had not asked for this responsibility, but something had shifted inside him when the alien woman touched his chest. He felt connected to this infant in a way he could not explain, and every time someone tried to take her away from him, she would cry, and she would only stop crying when held her again. "This is highly irregular," said a military officer named Colonel Davis. He was a thin man with cold eyes and a voice like sandpaper. "The alien specimen should be transferred to a secure facility for study." "She's not a specimen," said firmly. "She's a baby, and she needs to stay with me." "That's not your decision to make, Captain." "Then whose decision is it? She's not human. She has no rights under human law. The only person who had any claim to her is dead." Held the infant closer, feeling her warmth against his chest. "Her mother asked me to protect her. With her dying breath, she asked me to love her, and that's what I'm going to do." Colonel Davis opened his mouth to argue, but before he could speak, something happened. Something that changed everything. The sensors screamed in alarm, and his voice came over the intercom, high and frightened. "Captain, there's another ship. It just appeared out of nowhere." Ran to the bridge, the infant still in his arms. What he saw on the made his blood run cold. The ship was enormous. It dwarfed the military vessels, dwarfed the scientific ships, dwarfed anything humans had ever built. It was made of the same organic material as the smaller vessel they had found, but on a scale that comprehension. It hung in space like a small moon, radiating power and presence in something that felt almost like anger. "What is that?" Colonel Davis demanded, having followed to the bridge. "That," said slowly, "is family." The communication console crackled to life, and a voice filled the bridge. It was like the dead woman's voice, musical and resonant but deeper, older, carrying the weight of countless years. And just as before, understood every word, not through his ears but through his mind. "You have my grandchild. You will return her to me." Colonel Davis reached for his weapon but stopped him with a look. "Don't," he said. "Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. I will not allow these creatures to." These creatures could destroy every ship in this fleet without breaking a sweat. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. "They are so far beyond us that we're like ants to them. The only reason we're still alive is because they're letting us live. So put your weapon away and let me handle this." The colonel hesitated, then slowly lowered his hand. He did not like it, that much was clear, but he was not stupid. He could see the power of the alien vessel as well as anyone. turned to the communication console and spoke. "Your grandchild is safe. We have been caring for her since we found her, but her mother, I'm sorry, her mother did not survive." There was a long silence, so long that began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. Then the voice came again, quieter now, heavy with grief. "I know, I felt her passing, my daughter, my beautiful daughter." The voice broke for a moment, then steadied. "I have come for the child, and I have come for answers." "I can give you both," said, "but I need you to understand something. I made a promise to your daughter. I promised to protect this baby, to love her, to keep her safe. I intend to keep that promise." "You are human. What could a human possibly offer my granddaughter?" "I don't know, but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life finding out." Another silence, shorter this time. When the voice spoke again, there was something different in it. Not quite warmth, but perhaps the absence of hostility. "You are brave, human, or foolish, perhaps both. Very well, I will come to your vessel. We will speak face to face." The connection ended and let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. His hands were shaking and his heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. But he had done it. He had made contact. He had bought them time. "Captain," said, her voice barely above a whisper, "what do we do now?" Looked down at the infant in his arms. She was awake again, looking up at him with those enormous eyes, and he could swear she was smiling. "Now," he said, "we welcome our guest." The alien grandmother did not arrive by shuttle or transporter or any method could understand. One moment the bridge was empty except for the crew and Colonel Davis, and the next moment she was there, standing in the center of the room as if she had always been there. She was tall, taller than any human, and she carried herself with the kind of authority that came from centuries of leadership. Her form was humanoid like her daughter's, but there was something about her that made it clear this was merely a shape she had chosen, not the truth of what she was. Her eyes were ancient, deep pools of violet that held stars in their depths, and her hair flowed around her like living silver. "I am," she said, and her voice was the same one that had come through the communication console. "I am the grandmother of the child you hold, and the mother of the daughter you could not save." "I tried," said. The words came out before he could stop them, raw and honest. "I wanted to save her, but I was too late." Studied him for a long moment. Her gaze was piercing, penetrating, and felt as if she was looking into his very soul, seeing everything he was and everything he had ever been. It should have been terrifying, but somehow it was not. It was almost comforting, like being seen by someone who truly understood. "I know you tried," said finally. "I saw it in her memories. You came when no one else would come. You held her hand when she died. You promised to protect her child." She paused and something shifted in her expression. "Why? You did not know her. She was not your species. You owed her nothing." "She needed help. That's reason enough." "Is it?" Many would disagree. Many would say you should have waited for your authorities, your experts. Many would say you should have thought of your own safety first. "Many people are wrong about a lot of things," shifted the infant in his arms. She was making soft sounds now, reaching toward with her tiny hands. "I don't claim to be special. I'm just a cargo captain. I haul freight between planets and try not to die in the process. But when someone is in trouble, when a baby needs protection, you don't stop to think about politics or species or whether it's convenient. You just act." Was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. It was a strange expression on her alien face, but it was unmistakably warm. "You remind me of her," she said softly. "My daughter. She had that same fire, that same conviction, that same belief that doing the right thing was more important than doing the safe thing." "Is that why they killed her?" The smile faded, replaced by something cold and hard. "Yes. There are those among my people who believe that younger races should be left alone, left to develop on their own or perish in the attempt. They call themselves purists, isolationists. They believe that contact with species like yours would contaminate our culture, weaken our civilization." "And your daughter disagreed." My daughter believed that every conscious being has value, that every species has something to contribute to the great tapestry of existence. She believed in connection, in sharing, in love that crosses all boundaries. His voice caught for a moment. She believed in humanity, in your potential for good. She argued before our council that you deserved a chance to join the greater community of the galaxy, and for that belief she was murdered. Felt a weight settle on his shoulders. The alien woman had died because she had faith in his species, because she had thought humanity was worth protecting. It was a responsibility he had not asked for, but it was one he could not ignore. "What happens now?" he asked. "To your granddaughter, to us?" Reached out and touched the infant's cheek. The baby cooed and grabbed her finger, and something in its expression softened. "Now I take her home, to my realm, where she will be safe from those who killed her mother." "And humanity, what happens to us?" "That remains to be seen." Looked at, and her eyes were unreadable. "You have made an impression, Captain Bell, you and your crew, but one act of kindness does not prove the worth of an entire species. It will take more than this to convince the council that my daughter was right." Nodded slowly. He had not expected anything else. One man saving one baby was a small thing in the grand scheme of the universe. It would take time, effort, and countless more acts of compassion to change the minds of beings who had been watching humanity for. But it was a start. "Can I say goodbye to her?" he asked, looking down at the infant. "Before you take her?" Studied him for another long moment. "You love her already," she said. It was not a question. "Yeah, I do." "How is that possible? You have known her for only hours. She is not your species, not your family, not your responsibility." "Love doesn't care about any of that." Stroked the baby's cheek with one finger, and she turned toward his touch, seeking the warmth of his hand. "Love just happens. You don't choose it. You don't control it. It just comes, and when it does, you either accept it or you spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been." Was quiet for a very long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, softer, almost uncertain. "You are not what I expected, Belle." "I'm not what I expected either. A few hours ago I was just a cargo captain. Now," he shook his head, "now I don't know what I am." "You are the man who saved my granddaughter, the man my daughter trusted with her dying breath." Reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder, and he felt warmth flood through him, a connection being formed, a bond being created. "You are family." "What?" "Among my people, family is not determined by blood or species. It is determined by action, by choice, by love. You chose to save. You chose to love her. That makes you family." "Is that her name?" "Yes. It means hope's light in our tongue. My daughter named her that because she believed this child would be a bridge between our peoples, a light in the darkness that divides us." Looked at the baby with new eyes. She was not just an infant he had rescued. She was a symbol, a hope, a promise of what could be. And he was part of that now, whether he had chosen it or not. "What happens to me?" he asked. "Do I go back to my life, hauling cargo and pretending this never happened?" His eyes glittered with something that might have been amusement. "Is that what you want?" "No, but I don't know what else to do. I'm just a human. You're something else entirely, something so far beyond me that I can barely comprehend it. What could I possibly offer you, offer her?" "You could offer her humanity." His hand was still on his shoulder, and the warmth continued to spread through him, filling him with a strange sense of peace. "You could teach her what you taught her in those few hours. That kindness exists, that love can cross any boundary, that even in the vastness of the cosmos, a single act of compassion can change everything." "You want me to come with you?" "I want to offer you a choice. Come with me and help me raise my granddaughter. Leave your world, your species, everything you know. It will not be easy. You will be alone among beings who are not like you, in a place where the rules are different and the challenges are beyond anything you have ever faced." She paused, and her grip on his shoulder tightened slightly. "But you will not be truly alone. You will have, and you will have me." felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. His ship, his crew, his life, everything he had built, everything he was on one side of the scale, and on the other, a baby who needed him, a grandmother who was offering him a place in her world and a chance to be part of something bigger than himself. He looked around the bridge at his crew, was staring at him with wide eyes. Sam was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Colonel Davis was gripping his weapon but making no move to use it. They were waiting for him to decide, to choose to lead. She was looking back at him with those huge violet eyes, and in them he saw something he had not expected. He saw trust. Complete, absolute trust, the kind that only a child can give. And he knew in that moment what his answer would be. "Yes," he said, "I'll come with you." The reaction was immediate. Colonel Davis shouted a protest, made a sound of surprise. Sam just shook his head slowly as if he had expected nothing else. But smiled, and in her smile saw something he had not seen before: approval, respect, and perhaps, just perhaps, the beginning of affection. "Then it is decided," she said. "We leave now. My people will ensure that your crew is compensated for their troubles and returned safely to Earth. Your ship will be upgraded with technology that will serve them well in the years to come. And your species will be given a gift, a piece of knowledge that will help them on their journey toward the stars." "What kind of knowledge?" "That is for them to discover." Smile widened slightly. "But I promise you it will change everything." Turned to his crew one last time. "Take care of the wandering star," he said. "She's been good to me. I want her to be good to you too." "Captain's voice was thick with emotion. "Are you sure about this?" "No, but I'm going anyway." Looked at Sam, at the gruff engineer who had been his friend for 12 years. "Keep them safe, Sam. That's an order." Sam nodded slowly. "Yeah, I will. You take care of yourself and take care of that baby." "I will." And then did something with her hand, and the world around shifted, changed, became something else entirely. He felt himself moving, not through space but through something deeper, something more fundamental. The bridge of the wandering star faded away, and in its place came light, brilliant and warm and welcoming. When the light faded, found himself standing in a place of impossible beauty. Crystal spires rose around him, reaching toward a sky filled with colors he had no names for. Beings of light moved through the air, singing songs that made his heart ache with joy and sorrow in equal measure. And everywhere, everywhere, there was life and wonder and the promise of things beyond his imagination. "Welcome to my home," said. She was standing beside him, still holding his shoulder, and her form had shifted slightly. She was taller now, more radiant, and her eyes held depths that made dizzy. "Welcome to the realm of the Eternals. This is where we'll grow up. This is where you will help me raise her." Looked down at the infant in his arms. She was awake and looking around with wide, wonder-filled eyes, taking in her new home with the fearless curiosity of the very young. "Okay," said softly, "let's get started." And so began the next chapter of his life. A human, alone among beings of unimaginable power, a father to a child who was not his species, a bridge between worlds that had never before been connected. He did not know what the future held. He did not know if he would succeed or fail, if he would be accepted or rejected, if he would find happiness or heartbreak. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was exactly where he was supposed to be. And for the first time in his life, Bell felt like he had come home.